Welcome to the Sacred Places Indiana Fund Overview. Uh, so glad that you could join us this afternoon. I'm David Frederick. I'm Director of Sacred Places Indiana, and you can see on the screen three congregations that have participated in our program here at Indiana Landmarks. On the left, North United Methodist Church here in Indianapolis. In the center, St. Adalbert's Catholic Church in South Bend, and First Christian Church in Bloomington. Let me introduce the staff here at Sacred Places, Indiana. To my left is Mary Scharnberg, and she's our Associate Director. To my right, John Kochanzik. He's our Grants Administrator for the program. Here's the agenda for today. We have allotted 1 hour for this presentation. If questions come up for you during the presentation, please enter them in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat and noting questions to discuss at the end of the webinar. Due to time constraints, we may not have time to answer all the questions. Please feel free to email SPI with any additional questions that are not addressed today. Let others who may be interested in our program know that the session is being recorded and will be posted online on the Indiana Landmarks YouTube channel in the coming days. Sacred Places Indiana is a program of Indiana Landmarks. We are the largest statewide not-for-profit historic preservation organization in the United States, and we were founded in 1960. Indiana Landmarks revitalizes communities, strengthens connections to our diverse heritage, and saves meaningful places. Indiana Landmarks got to start saving places that matter with the Morris Butler House that you see on the screen right now. It's located in the Old North Side in Indianapolis. The house, like many historic buildings in downtown Indianapolis, was threatened by the construction of the new federal interstate system. In 1960, local civic leaders, including Mr. Eli Lilly, joined forces to incorporate the not-for-profit organization known today as Indiana Landmarks. The group's first effort was to purchase, restore, and preserve the Morris Butler House. After many decades as a house museum, today it is currently home of the offices of Sacred Places Indiana and is a private event space. Indiana Landmarks offers a variety of services across the state. We have grant and loan programs, DIY training. We are advocates for preservation issues both on the local and statewide and national areas. We have a library and an information center, but most important to today's meeting is the preservation consulting services provided through our 9 regional offices. Regional support is available to any historic congregation who needs preservation assistance. What is Sacred Places Indiana? SPI is a program of Indiana Landmarks with 2 parallel programs intended to support congregations in historic houses of worship. New Dollars, New Partners is an intensive training program where congregations learn how to engage their communities in fresh ways, revitalize their historic property, and identify assets for fundraising and financial sustainability. Congregations who complete the training are eligible for a planning grant, and the program can serve as a springboard to capital grant projects through the Sacred Places Indiana Fund. Today's focus is on that SPI fund. Sacred Places Indiana is funded by the Lilly Endowment. Sacred Places Indiana was initiated in 2015 and has served 110 congregations through New Dollars, New Partners, and the SPI Fund. The SPI Fund began in 2023 and has awarded over $8.5 million in grant funding to date. Now I'm going to turn this presentation over to the Associate Director of Sacred Places Indiana, Mary Scharnberg. Mary?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. I assume most of you are here to learn about what benefits the grant program offers, what projects are eligible, and how to apply. So let's get started. The Sacred Places Indiana program does more than simply write checks to churches. We are invested in the success of our participating congregations, and to that end, we provide training that addresses working with architects and trade professionals, best practices for conducting a capital campaign, and workshops on telling your story to gain momentum for your project. We also provide support throughout the grant cycle with a dedicated SPI staff member, one of the three of us here, and also assistants from our regional offices to work with you throughout the grant-funded project. Congregations that are accepted into the program will attend a 2-day workshop in November of 2026. The training is intended to build on foundational knowledge needed to undertake a capital campaign. It's also a great opportunity to meet other congregations facing many of the same challenges in maintaining a historic church. Our congregations typically represent different regions throughout Indiana, different faith traditions, as well as diverse racial and socioeconomic backgrounds. And they also vary tremendously in their experience with capital campaign planning and fundraising, which is why the workshop is so important. So the training is mandatory. It is in person at our headquarters in Indianapolis, and it requires each congregation to assemble a team of 2 to 3 people to send to the training, which does include a clergy member. To help those outside of the Indianapolis area, we do reimburse the cost of hotel accommodations. Obviously, we think the training is important, but of course, we realize that for most of you today, capital grants are the reason you are here. So I'm happy to tell you we also write checks. Our grants range from $75,000 to $500,000 and are intended to assist congregations that have identified significant repair needs at their historic houses of worship and are also prepared to raise matching funds through a capital campaign. Because our grant is a matching grant. Matching grants are designed not only to assist with fund towards a project goal, but also to act as a catalyst for project fundraising. Successful applicants will demonstrate that Lilly Endowment money will be used to leverage additional new money through a capital campaign undertaken by the congregation. And so here's how it breaks down. Grants under $100,000 require a 2-to-1 match, meaning 2 of our dollars to 1 of the congregations. And grants over $100,000 require a 1-to-1 match, 1 of our dollars to 1 of yours. In addition to capital grants, we also offer a planning grant for those accepted into the program. And the planning grant is intended to ensure the project is off to a good start and also will meet our criteria for grant-related fundraising and construction. Planning grants are intended to help fully define your project and build a foundation from which to launch a successful campaign. Preparation is key to seeing your project successfully completed. Planning grants can be used to pay for a building conditions assessment, and I'll go discuss that more fully in a minute. Can also be used for a fundraising feasibility study, which is conducted by professional fundraising consultants. And these consultants can help your congregation determine readiness to conduct a campaign, estimate the amount of funds likely ready to be raised, and generally provide some coaching. Funds may also be used to prepare architectural plans or drawings related to the grant-funded project. Again, all of these elements are designed to build a good foundation for project success. And planning grants are offered up to $25,000 per congregation. Okay, so what is a building assessment and why do I need one if I already know what my building needs? This is a question we get from congregations a lot. So a building conditions assessment is a visual inspection of a building undertaken to evaluate its physical condition. It really is the starting point to determine the scope of work you will undertake in your project. The congregation may have identified stained glass windows as the #1 priority, only to discover a much more urgent issue with the foundation. And this information allows the congregation to focus their campaign efforts where they are needed most, and also to build a long-term plan for building and facility stewardship. So a completed BCA is done by an architect or an engineer, and it will present a prioritized list of recommendations. What is most urgent? What project should be tackled first? What could maybe be backburnered? It can provide estimates on the costs associated with each recommendation from an unbiased source. Again, this unbiased source is really important. And not only does this provide a critical checkup for historic buildings, but it also allows congregations to make informed, proactive decisions about repairs and prioritize critical needs. The information should help congregations avoid investing time and money into one project only to identify an undiagnosed but urgent repair need that could change the scope of the project, the campaign messaging, and deplete resources. We believe in the value of this assessment so much that we are willing to pay for it with no match required if you are accepted into the program. So in total, it's a 2-year process to raise the funds in full and complete construction. This graphic details the typical timeline for a grant-funded project. We are looking for projects that can successfully demonstrate to our reviewers their ability to be completed within this time frame. Applications close on June 15th, and we announce the grantees in September. If accepted into the program, be prepared to assemble your team and begin the necessary steps to launch your project right away. Shortly after we send out award notifications, the congregations that have been accepted into the program will attend the group training orientation that I outlined earlier. All congregations are offered the opportunity to receive a planning grant with no match required, and planning grants are typically used within the first 6 months of program acceptance. Be sure to indicate your interest in receiving a planning grant in your application to the program. The next step is once 25% of the matching funds have been raised and other benchmarks met, congregations can submit a request for the initial 50% disbursement of the capital grant. And in order to access the capital grant, you must meet certain project planning and fundraising benchmarks. Most congregations meet those benchmarks within 1 year of program entry. Once the initial grant is dispersed, it typically takes an additional year for construction and fundraising to be complete. Final grant funds are dispersed when construction is finished. All matching funds have been raised, including any additional funds needed to complete the project. We expect grantees to be able to complete their projects by November of 2028. So, capital project phasing. It is unlikely, but not impossible, that any congregation will receive a $500,000 capital grant. To date, the maximum capital grant awarded was $400,000. Successful requests for capital funding will present a discrete project rather than a collection of smaller, unrelated projects. We are looking for transformational preservation work, not your handyman's list. For this reason, Sacred Places Indiana recommends planning capital projects in phases that could be funded partially or wholly. And there are 2 reasons for this. We have numerous requests for funding for many worthy projects, and the scope and scale of a $500,000 grant translates into a $1 million project that must be completed within a 2-year time frame. For larger grant requests, we suggest phasing your capital projects so that if we can't fund the entire project, we might be able to fund a portion of the project. As an example, let's say an applicant's property has roofing issues causing water infiltration into the sanctuary. In addition, there are stained glass windows that they also know need to be repaired. The project total is about $400,000. An ideal application would break out the cost, detailing phases to address the water infiltration, and then another phase to address the stained glass windows. The most urgent repair needs should be prioritized as phase 1. If we could not fund both, we might be able to fund the highest priority item. In other words, give our reviewers options. It is important to note that we do not fund projects already underway, nor do we reimburse work that has already been completed. This is because we do not fund work that we have not reviewed and because we have defined criteria and oversight that must be applied to each project. And while it is true that congregations apply to our program at all different stages of project planning, there are 2 things that all grantees have in common. One is they have not started construction, and the other is that they are prepared to raise at least 50% of the matching funds after they have been accepted into the program. And with that, I am now going to hand off the slideshow to our grants manager, John Kochanzik.
Thanks, Mary. I'm going to briefly discuss the application process and project eligibility for the Sacred Places Indiana Fund, including types of eligible projects and how to access the online grant software. There are several required conditions that must be met in order to participate in the program. While not comprehensive, the most important requirements listed on your screen include Your property must be located within the state of Indiana and must be at least 50 years old. Any buildings constructed after 1976 are not eligible for consideration. Your property must have been built originally as a house of worship and be owned by an active community of faith. If your congregation purchased a historic building from a now defunct congregation, you are still eligible to apply. Applicants must be a congregation or a closely affiliated nonprofit. Your congregation must be at least 3 years old and offer community-minded services to non-members. And also, congregations must be able to raise matching funds. If you're interested in viewing the complete list of eligibility requirements, you can view them in the online grant application or on the Sacred Places Indiana section of Indiana Landmarks website. The Sacred Places Indiana Fund supports congregations undertaking significant repair and restoration projects involving the building's envelope. This includes the foundations, roof, masonry, windows, gutters, and downspouts. We also fund work on bell towers and domes. We support projects that work with mechanical systems, including HVAC, electrical, and plumbing systems. Life safety and fire suppression systems. We like to support ADA accessibility projects and also restoration of significant artistic features. Sacred Places Indiana is a historic preservation program and thus prioritizes the restoration and repair of significant historic architectural features. Applicants with emergent needs involving their building's envelope are prioritized during the application evaluation stage. In a few minutes, we will discuss our review committee's evaluation criteria. It's important to note your project must adhere to the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation, which is a universally accepted framework for doing work on older and historic properties. The Secretary's standards for rehabilitation provide direction in making appropriate choices in planning the repairs, alterations, and additions that may be part of a rehabilitation project. While there are 4 categories designated by the Interior Secretary, the rehabilitation standards are most often used by local historic districts and commissions nationwide. Indiana Landmarks can provide a list of architects, engineers, and contractors who have experience working on projects and adhering to the standards. Any professionals contracted to carry out capital work should be familiar with applying the standards to the project. Not every type of project is eligible to receive grant funding through the SBI fund. Sacred Places Indiana does not fund projects that involve demolition or construction that alters character-defining architectural features. Because we get this question a lot, we do not fund repairs on pipe organs. Additionally, we cannot recommend funding certain interior work intended solely to enhance the worship space or worship experience. We cannot replace pews or other primary seating in the sanctuary, although restoration of historic pews could be considered. For a full list of ineligible project activities and expenses, please visit Sacred Places Indiana's website or refer to Section 1 of the online application. You should be aware of a few important dates related to the application process. The deadline to apply is June 15th at midnight. No late submissions will be accepted. We plan to complete application reviews during August and will notify selected participants in September. All accepted congregations or parishes will be required to attend a mandatory 2-day training workshop this November at the Indiana Landmarks Center in Indianapolis. As Mary discussed earlier, this involves sending a team of 2 to 3 participants to the training, and teams should include a senior clergy member and lay leaders who will be involved with the project. How do I apply to the program? SBI uses an online grants management platform called Foundant Grants Lifecycle Manager. All applicants will be required to create an account to access the application. You can find a link to the platform on the Sacred Places Indiana website at the link listed in this slide. After you navigate to the website, locate the appropriate link and click Apply Now, which will take you to the Foundant login screen to create an account. Once you've navigated to Foundant's login page, you will need to select the Create New Account option to begin. You will be prompted to enter contact information and details about your church, including your federal employee identification number, or EIN. We recommend creating 1 account per congregation and delegating responsibilities as you assign roles internally within your team. If you have any issues in the account creation step, feel free to reach out to SPI staff for assistance. Once you've successfully created your account, you will land on Fountain's applicant dashboard. Any active applications will appear on this screen with details describing your progress. Click Apply on the top of the screen to see open grant opportunities. From the list of available applications, you have the option to click Preview to see a blank version of the application. Once you're ready to begin, simply click the Apply button to get started. The application itself is lengthy, and we suggest that your team familiarize itself with the required questions and attachments. Fountain offers an option to generate what they call a question list, which will produce a PDF copy of the application, including any progress to date. It could be helpful to distribute the application PDF to all team members who will be working on the application. Once you begin your congregation's application, users might notice that Fountain refers to the application as an LOI or letter of intent. Rest assured you're in the right place, and the application referenced as LOI relates to the functionality of the grant software. Applicants who are approved to participate in the SPI fund will subsequently complete 2 additional applications, first for a planning grant and second for a capital grant. As you advance through your application, Fountain periodically saves your progress. However, we suggest that you navigate to the bottom of the application and click Save LOI when you are finished working to avoid potential loss of work. It might be helpful to work on narrative responses in a word processing software and copy-pasting work into the application. Please also note that many questions have character limitations that include spaces. When you're ready to submit the application, navigate to the bottom of the page and click Submit LOI. If you've missed a required question, you'll be unable to submit until an answer is provided. Again, SPI staff are available to assist with any technical issues you might experience while working in Fountain. All applications must be submitted by the midnight deadline on June 15th. Now I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Sacred Places Indiana Director David Frederick, who will offer guidance on what we are looking for from successful applications. He'll provide information on the application evaluation process and the criteria that our advisory committee considers when making award decisions. David?
Well, thanks, John. You see on the screen our evaluation criteria. I'm going to walk you through each of these categories so that you understand what the Indiana Fund is looking for. During our application review, we prioritize cohort diversity. We seek to assemble a cohort of grantees that is diverse in terms of geography, faith tradition, and racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic makeup. Our first criteria area is involved the historic, cultural, and architectural significance of your sacred place. Successful applications should consider some of these following questions. Does the building tell a story relevant to our history, either cultural or religious? Is the building a work of a recognized architect? If so, is it a high quality or a good example of their work? Is the building an exceptional example of its style or type? And does the building have a strong physical presence in its community based on its siting or location? Now, a common question that we get, our church is historic, but we need to invest in our parish house. Will you fund our project if it's not focused on the historic church? The answer is a qualified yes. Our priority is the historic house of worship, but other historic buildings on the campus may be considered. But I would remind you that this is a highly competitive process, and certainly the actual sanctuary, sacred place, is our top priority. Your building does not have to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places or on the state registry to qualify for the fund. However, buildings listed or determined eligible for inclusion are often given priority. The second category, of review is a congregation's community serving activities and public value. We are looking for congregations that operate and host programming that serves vulnerable and at-risk populations, that congregations that share spaces with non-affiliated groups and organizations, parishes and congregations that partner with other congregations, faith-based organizations, not-for-profit organizations, and/or local municipalities. We are looking for congregations that have a widespread reputation for being welcoming, a welcoming center of community life that extends beyond the congregation to serve non-members. In brief, we are looking for congregations and parishes that are engaged with their communities. Our next area of focus will consider your congregation's project scope and need. We fund historic preservation projects that address significant repair needs or life safety issues. Projects that increase a congregation's ability to open their buildings to new populations may also be considered. We expect applicants to make a strong case for their project and the impact of the proposed project to your congregation and its mission. This is an opportunity to make a compelling case to reviewers that your project merits funding. Next, we consider your congregation's readiness to fundraise and undertake a capital campaign. Congregations with previous capital campaign experience could be in a better position to participate in the program. We're looking for congregations that understand their building's needs, that are ready to undertake a fundraising campaign, congregations that have a realistic fundraising goal, and that are prepared to meet Sacred Places Indiana's program timeline. We're looking for congregations and parishes that are proactively advancing their projects. We prioritize congregations that show a willingness and ability to raise funds beyond congregational resources alone. A major goal of the Lilly Endowment in our grant program is to catalyze their investment of their grant monies. For this reason, 50% of matching funds must be new money raised after the congregation is accepted into the Sacred Places Indiana program. Here's some of the things you need to know about matching funds. All of the following can count towards your match. Of course, congregational giving, and that's going to include cash or documented pledges, government grants, organizational funds, funds raised through events and fundraisers, proceeds from the sale of stock or real estate, and matured bequests. In-kind materials and professional services that directly benefit the grant-funded project. In-kind donations may not exceed 20% of the match and must be approved by Sacred Places Indiana staff as an eligible source. Reserve funds, as long as emergency or operating funds are not depleted. Matching funds cannot include monies from the corpus or the principal of an endowed fund. However, interest from these endowed funds may be eligible. 50% of matching funds must be raised after the acceptance into the program. Sacred Places Indiana does not reimburse congregations for expenses incurred before acceptance into the program. Our next evaluation criteria involves congregational health. Sacred Places Indiana prioritizes healthy, stable congregations so that our investment is truly impactful and lasting. We look for the following: tenured clergy and strong, capable lay leadership, stable or growing membership, financial strength and stability, and support of the judicatory or governing body of your denomination. Additionally, clergy and lay leadership should be of the same mind regarding participation in the program. Both clergy and lay leadership need to be ready to move forward in this project. Lastly, we consider the application's quality and strength. Sacred Places Indiana Fund is a competitive program, so we urge our applicants to create a strong argument for participation. Applications should make a thorough and compelling case for support, clearly articulate the project's goals and components. The application should submit a fully completed application, including all required attachments, and include high quality, high-resolution photographs that help us fully appreciate your buildings. Here's a couple pro tips for you. Make your proposal scalable. Many good projects may not be funded at full amount requested. If your project can be phased, for example, you might propose to restore stained glass windows, but include estimates for each facade or section so that the project can be partially funded. The second one, and I think this is important to understand, consider getting outside or professional help with photography. High impact photos are important in the review process. The reviewers may not, or probably have not, been in your building, and certainly our fiduciary committee members are likely not to have seen your building. So the better photographs that you can supply, both in interior and exterior, a big help as we go through this review process. So in summary, successful applicants to Sacred Places Indiana Fund will illustrate the historical and architectural significance of their property, be able to complete a capital project in a 2-year time frame, be capable and able to plan and execute a capital campaign to raise matching funds. The congregation must demonstrate a strong connection to and engagement with their local community. You should be able to present a stable and healthy membership and congregational support, and submit a thorough, compelling, and complete application. If you've heard all this that has preceded this slide, maybe you feel that you're maybe not quite ready for the Sacred Places Indiana Fund. If it does seem daunting, or if your congregation could benefit for some capacity building training to prepare for a future Sacred Places Indiana Fund grant application, we are also accepting applications for our New Dollars, New Partners program that begins in September. If you think your congregation could be a good candidate, please reach out to the SPI staff for more information. This New Dollars, New Partners program is designed for smaller capacity congregation who would benefit from 4 Saturday training sessions. You can see a description of those 4 modules on your screen. Making a case for your story places. This is where our phrase that you've heard several times, telling a compelling story, falls into, and it also talks about working with professionals, architects, and engineers. The second module, new community partnership and asset-based community development. It's a review of the asset mapping process. The third module is a capital campaign primer, and the fourth module is looks at funding resources that are outside of your congregation. This program, participants receive a planning grant up to $25,000 to complete a building conditions assessment or work with a professional fundraiser. There's no match to that planning grant. Which path is right for your congregation? If you would like to discuss with Sacred Places India program staff to discuss what program might fit your congregation best, please fill out the letter of interest form on our website. Once submitted, a Sacred Places staff member will be in touch for the next steps in the application process. How about some common questions that we get about this program? How much matching funds do we need to raise before we can begin a capital project? If I don't receive a grant during this grant cycle, will there be other opportunities? Well, I guess I could start answering that. Sure. Yes, we do have 2 more funding rounds, grant making rounds available coming up in 2027 and 2028.
Okay, we are turning the screen sharing off.
Thanks so much for listening to us. And we'd be happy to take any we're going to address some questions that we've gotten through our chat.
Right. Been keeping track of them here. Somebody asked, what if you already have a building conditions assessment?
Mary, would you like to swing on that one?
Yeah, if the building conditions assessment is less than 3 years old, we would allow you to consider using the planning grant funds for fundraising, coaching, or maybe if you've identified your project and realized that it needs some architectural drawings or bid documents prepared in order for the project to go out for bid, we would allow congregations to use funds for that as well. If it's older than 3 years old, then maybe we would ask for part of it to be updated specifically related to the project that you might propose. We might want some more updates on that. So it also puts you in a really good position application wise if you have a thorough understanding of what your building needs. While it is not required to have a building conditions assessment at all to be in this program, it does signal to the review committee that the congregation has really done their research and knows what their building needs.
Right. Thanks, Mary. Can we get a copy of this slide presentation to show our congregation?
What you will be able to do is go to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to show them this webinar, but we don't have we're not distributing the actual slide deck.
Let's see. Could solar panels be part of this grant?
No. Give me another easy question.
Yeah, we're a historic preservation program, so we really are looking for projects that address historic preservation.
And as we said earlier in the webinar, our priorities start with the building envelope, roofs, masonry, windows, foundations. We're interested in MEP projects, mechanical, electrical, engineering issues, life safety, ADA, those kinds of things are our main priorities.
Can you apply for 2 major projects in the same year, or is only 1 project per year eligible or recommended?
If you are admitted to the Sacred Place Indiana Fund program, you will have a single project to work on, and until it is completed, you're not eligible to reapply to Sacred Places Indiana Fund.
That being said, if your project, say, has a roof, repair and a stained glass window repair, you could apply for both of those projects, but that's where we talked a lot about project phasing. So I hope that answers the question.
What determines a tenured pastor?
Well, it's subjective, I suppose. We don't have a number associated with it, but there is a portion of the application that kind of asks for the pastoral leadership background. So I guess someone that just wasn't hired the day that you were submit the application, but we're interested in looking to see if there's the leadership team is strong and willing to work through a project together. So yeah, go ahead.
What's the difference between the letter of interest and the application?
John, you want to take that one?
Sure. So the letter of interest is just a fillable form on our website that captures some data and some information about your church and your congregation, and is a point of contact for us to reach out to you to discuss. And then the letter of intent is in the grant software. You'll see it referred to as an LOI, but the letter of intent that Foundant uses to refer to the application is the program application itself. Let's see. If we currently have roof damage and cannot wait until September to repair, is there a different process?
Unfortunately, and we understand this is a difficulty with our program. We have a set schedule, and if your roof issue is imminent and needs immediate repair, then it's not going to work with our current setup of our grant program.
Right. We're getting lots of good questions. Do you need to have a building conditions assessment done for the capital grant, or just new dollars, new partners, or both programs?
The New Dollars, New Partners program is an excellent lead up to an application in the Sacred Places Indiana Fund. That training, the training modules that we expressed in the slide deck really go a long way to preparing you to answer the questions in the Sacred Places Indiana grant. And of course, being supplied with a grant then to do a conditions assessment is very helpful. But you do not have to go through new dollars to apply for the Sacred Place Indiana Fund. And no, you're not required to have a planning grant completed. Of course, the more you are aware of your proposed scope of your project, the better you'll be able to write your application. But that's why if you're admitted to the program, that's why we provide planning grants and feasibility studies, so to help refine your need and to make sure that we're not missing a problem with your building that wasn't immediately obvious.
Here's a good question. Can a church who has applied before and who did not receive a grant and has not moved forward with restoration or fundraising reapply?
Mary, you want to?
The answer is yes.
Well, we have gotten many, many good applications that we could not fund. I believe last year we had over 50 applications in this program, funded 14. So that the ones that didn't get funded weren't bad applications. In fact, in many cases, they were excellent applications. And we only had, I know this sounds funny, but we only had $2.5 million to allocate. But we had $10 million worth of requests. So absolutely. And if you have applied in the past and would like to discuss your application from last year with staff members to see if there's ways to improve your application, we'd be delighted to make arrangements for those conversations.
All right. If we have sold land and are holding it in investments for this purpose, I assume this is not eligible based on your criteria to be new money. Just confirming?
Confirmed.
Well, we do allow up to 50% of funds to be raised before you've entered into the program.
Yeah, but they ask if it was new money. It can't, if it's in a.
Could use half of it.
You could use half of it.
All right. Taps on another question, and that kind of taps on this question. For matching funds needing to be raised after acceptance in the program, if we have matching funds already saved, would this not be open for us? In other words, if we have matching fund already, are we required to raise additional new funds? And the answer is yes. You could use half of that money, but you would be required to raise the second half as new money.
And again, the same kind of question as previously. The intent is for the Lilly money to catalyze new money, and they're really looking for congregations that are willing to go into a campaign and reach out to their community and to their members to raise that other money. So if you need to raise $100,000 for your match and you have money set aside in a building fund, you could use 50,000 of that, but you would need to raise an additional 50,000 new money. Even if you had enough money in the fund to cover it, you still have to raise 50% of the money for your match as new money.
If we've already gone through a building conditions assessment, hired an architect, have drawings that are approved by the state, but have not begun construction, can we apply?
Yes, absolutely.
But if you've begun construction, then you would not be eligible for consideration. This is a good question. What if the structure is not so much historical, but historical events in the neighborhood around it are historical? Would it qualify?
That would certainly be under consideration. We would encourage you to go ahead and apply events in cultural, local history, cultural events that are national or statewide in regard is certainly would be considered. So it's not just a pretty building, no. We're looking for congregations that may have a nice building, but that were important in, for example, the civil rights movement. Or I know we've worked with a Quaker meeting house that was very important in the women's movement in the early 20th century that made their place important. So those kind of examples certainly would consider.
But the building must be 50 years old,
Yeah.
at least 50 years old.
What if we have an attached building constructed in 1914 connected to a sanctuary built in 1880? Could funding be used to connect them to make them ADA compliant?
Well, connecting is going to imply new construction, and we don't fund new construction.
All right. For a very small church, how many people would need to be on the team for the New Dollars, New Partners program?
We ask for 4 to 5 um, team members for the cohort in New Dollars program, and that should include pastoral leadership.
Let's see. What if we have to do a partial repair to prevent further damage? Can the rest of the repair be considered if, for instance, we replace a section of a roof, but not the whole roof?
I'm going to suggest you call one of our staff members so we could have a discussion and more clearly understand the project and your need. Happy to do that while the application is open, so we could kind of better understand what the project might include.
This is, I think, a question just on clarification on the New Dollars, New Partners timeline. Does it all occur in September in Indianapolis?
No, we give you, we're not trying to kill you. No, we have a Saturday in September, a Saturday in October. We don't try to schedule anything in November and December. Most of us are doing something else at our houses of worship in that time period. Then we have a January and a February session. Complete this New Dollars training in February and immediately. In fact, you can begin the application for your planning grant even prior to February so that you can work on a planning grant at the same time you're working on the application for capital funding, if that's your interest.
Okay. This is a good question. What makes for a successful team for this effort, and what are the recommended roles of the team? So we can ask for people, for those to participate with those strengths.
John, you're right. That is a good question. Well, of course, we're going to start with pastoral leadership. It's important to have clergy involved. We often think of you'll have some building and grounds people that are probably already helping you take care of your historic house of worship. Generally speaking, you'll have a finance committee as part of your volunteer work at your congregation. If there's some money people, I know at my meeting, the finance committee not only looks at annual budgets and that kind of thing, but is also in charge of annual stewardship. So someone who is involved in the stewardship and money income at your congregation be a great person to include. Boy, if you can find a good writer, I would highly recommend that. We're like any other mere mortals. The better something is presented, the easier it is to support. So a well-written application is often the result of a good writer. In fact, we'd encourage you during the application project to select a single voice in your writing of the application. There'll be other people in the congregation working on background, facts, and figures, but try not to have 8 different people writing sections of your application. So building and grounds, finance, your own internal annual stewardship campaign, someone who might be involved with a lot of the community engagement that your congregation does. Those kinds of people would be excellent for these team membership.
I would also add someone who could be a good project manager because of all the things that David just listed, having somebody that can wrangle all those disparate elements and would be useful too. So you can kind of take stock of the strengths within your own congregation and decide who would be the most appropriate to help advance the project.
Here's one I can answer. Does the Sacred Places Indiana program include a Halo report to help raise funds?
Well, you've well, you've talked to our friends in Philadelphia, it sounds like. Go ahead, John.
Our planning grants don't specifically fund Halo report studies, but we do collaborate pretty closely with Partners for Sacred Places in Philadelphia who provides those studies and could refer you to get some assistance with that. If a portion of the building is newer than 50 years old, the benchmark, would the whole building be eligible?
That's not an easy question to answer. Um, I would say primarily that the project suggested needs to be applied to the historic building. On the other hand, if it's, say, an HVAC system that supplies heat and cooling to not only the historic portion of the building, but also to the addition, then that would be considered. So again, this might be another question that you contact us, and Mary or John or I or all of us would be happy to kind of weigh in once we know a little bit more about the project that you're suggesting.
I will say a roof is another example. If you have a roof that connects two buildings and you need to replace the roof on the historic and it connects to the newer, we wouldn't fund just half a roof. So again, reach out to us, but that could be eligible.
Which segues into a question: who should I contact to discuss my prior application and why we were not approved? You can find our contact information on the Indiana Landmarks website. Contact us by email or phone. We're responsive,
Yeah.
and we can take a look at that application and help maybe give you some feedback on why it wasn't approved. And it's an incredibly competitive application process, and often that's just the answer, unfortunately. Would cosmetic updates within the worship space be able to be funded in addition to windows, doors, and foundation?
Cosmetic, like painting or carpeting or no, we don't fund those kinds of projects. So it really needs to be something that helps keep the building in usable condition, which is why we focused on the um, building envelope and mechanical systems and that kind of thing.
That being said, if it was a significant piece of artwork or something along those lines, say a mosaic that needed restoration, significant artistic features are eligible, but carpet and paint, not so much.
Do you come on site, and when in the process?
Well, we like to, and we certainly will look into that. We're more likely to do site visits with applications we've already received, and that might be another pro tip for you. We get, as you can imagine, we get a lot of applications at the end of the grant cycle. So in other words, we come in on a Monday morning right after the grant application is complete, or the time frame is complete, and there are 30 applications, and we've had 10 that have been submitted prior to that. So the sooner you complete your application, the more likely we'd be able to do a site visit. But yes, the staff likes to go on the road, likes to look at it, helps us better understand the issues in the congregation. So and of course, you can always contact us and invite us out, and we'll try to consider that based on our current travel schedule.
Yeah, and that being said, we won't be able to get to every congregation, even if invited. So, just because we don't do a site visit does not necessarily mean you're not eligible or not being considered. It's just we have more applications than we have days on the calendar to tour churches.
Okay. Question about the application deadline for New Dollars, New Partners. And do we need to own our building already to participate?
Yes, you need to own the building to participate. We are taking applications for New Dollars currently, and it will be open, Mary,
through the middle of July, July 15th.
Thank you.
All right. Would our non-working care lawn be considered?
I'm sorry. This is, we get this question some, and it's really not part of our funding priorities. I mean, if it's a historic Carillon, I can see why it might qualify. I would just tell you that it will not, it is not likely to be competitive in terms of the other applications that we're going to receive.
Unless it's a structural issue. We do fund lots of bell towers that have
Yes.
carillons in them, so we would fund the structural component of it, but not the internal workings, much like organs.
Yeah.
So question about the timeline for New Dollars, New Partners, and also next year's SPI fund grant cycle. So we're accepting applications for New Dollars, New Partners until mid-July, unless we don't receive enough. But we're anticipating that we will.
Yeah, we had twice as many as we could include last year, so.
And for next year's Sacred Places Indiana Fund grant cycle, it will be parallel. Applications will open in January, close in mid-June, on a similar program timeline. Clarifying that the minimum project is $75,000. So the minimum grant is $75,000, which technically with a required match places the minimum
113,000.
Yeah, about 112,500 would be our minimum total project cost.
Because we award 2-to-1 at that grant level, so 2 of our dollars to one of the congregations.
Okay.
Another pro tip, the best bang for your buck at Sacred Places Indiana Fund is $150,000 project. And that's 100,000 from us and 50,000 that you have to raise. That probably doesn't get any sweeter in the Historic Preservation Church grant world than that.
Is a planning grant built within the New Dollars, New Partners program or a separate component?
Participants in the New Dollars, New Partners program, if they complete all the internal processes, which includes attendance and a few homework documents, will receive up to $25,000 in planning money. And we restrict New Dollars training cohorts to about 10 congregations a year.
If the church has already invested in projects such as HVAC or other major projects, does that help our chances of qualifying for a grant?
I would answer yes. We really want to see proactive stewardship of the building.
Yep. And if you have done a big project like this, it would imply that you are comfortable in coming up with funds, raising funds for it. So that would be another advantage to having done it before. Yeah.
Okay, we've had a lot of time for questions.
Yeah, that's great.
We've covered most of them.
We're still taking questions if you have some that haven't been asked.
Can the grant application include multiple building elements that need replacement?
The answer to that is yes, although with the cautionary, please do not provide a handyman's list. We don't want to fund a bunch of $500, $1,000, $5,000 lists. We're really looking for transformational preservation projects that are going to protect the building into the future. So while yes, you could ask for an HVAC project to also be in line with a roof project or stained glass window project, we just ask that you phase those in the application. We have many congregations that go into multi-million-dollar campaigns, and they realize that their campaign is going to extend beyond our 2-year timeline, but they're setting themselves up for success by understanding the entire project that they're asking their congregation to undertake. So we might just be a small part of a larger project, but it could involve multiple components.
And as a caution, I would say the question asked about replacement, any project that we fund has to adhere to the Secretary of Interior's guidelines. So it depends on what you mean by replacement, as opposed to restoring historic windows or replacing them with new B windows. There's a big difference in that project.
Okay, I think that's time. David, you want some closing remarks?
Well, we are very grateful for the attendance. We're grateful for the interest that you all have shown in our program. We're anxious to begin looking at applications and working with congregations around the state. If you have a friend or colleague that also is a member of a congregation or parish in a historic building, I'd pass the word along and refer them to the YouTube recording of this session. But most of all, I guess I would just encourage you to reach out individually, make contact with us. The best part of our jobs is working with congregations, faith communities around the state of Indiana who have these wonderful historic resources, and it's our intent to know and help as many of you as we can.
And if we didn't get to your question, reach out to us independently and we'll have a chat.
All right,
Thanks,
well, thank
everybody.
you.
Blessings to you.